the world around us, the observable universe, is largely linear, right? The day has 24 hours, the seasons come and go, the sun kind of gets up at the same time and gets to bed at the same time every day. Now, technology moves on an exponential curve, and those two worlds collide, which makes it so important for us to force ourselves to think in exponential terms.
Okay, so throughout this lesson, we're going to keep referring to linear and exponential. By this, we mostly mean like lines on a graph, where linear goes up at a constant rate, like you get 1 year older each year, 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1, whereas exponentials are kind of weird, and they go up on a curve.
Particularly if you're building something which is a little bit harder than, like just putting up a lemonade stand, for example, right? And more power to you if you want to build a lemonade stand. But if you're building something based on technology, understand that it will take you a while to build this product, get it into the market, have your users adopt it. So you want to know actually how good is that technology, how will it look like by the time you hit the market. And that might look very different than it does look today. So urban legend has it that the inventor of the chessboard gave the chessboard to a king as a present. And the king was so impressed by the game of chess that he wanted to give the inventor of the chessboard some reward. Name your reward, I will make it happen. And the inventor of the chessboard went to the king and said, all I am asking for is I want to have 1 corn of rice put on the first checkerboard of your chessboard. And I want to have it doubled every single checkerboard, and then basically fill the board with rice coins. And the king, linear thinker he is, of course misunderstood this whole thing and was like, that is amazing. That sounds like I'm getting out with basically giving this guy a bag of rice. Now here's the interesting thing. Of course you go from 1 rice corn to 2 to 4 and 8, 16 and so on, and they're very small, right? It's tiny amounts of rice. But what is called the second half of the chessboard, so once you get past the 32, the numbers suddenly get really, really big. When you get to the end of the chessboard, the amount of rice on that chessboard is bigger than Mount Everest. And it's bigger than anything humans have ever produced in terms of rice in a single year. So of course, our inventor got very, very rich, and we had a very, very disappointed, linearly thinking king. When you think about computers, you need to understand what is called Moore's Law. So Gordon Moore, the guy who invented Intel, who created that company 50 years ago, said the numbers of transistors on a square inch doubles every 2 years, which just means your computer gets twice as fast at the same price point. And you kind of know this because you need to buy new computers every couple years, right? Because the old one feels slow. It really sank in for me when someone asked me an interesting question. He said, okay, so if that is true, how good will computers be in about 10 years or in about 20 years? And I was just shocked. I was like, I have no idea. Let me try to figure that out. And then of course you do the math and you see that in 20 years computers will be significantly more powerful than what you have today. And then the question becomes, what can you do with that? When this gets really dramatic, we call this literally the chaos and amazement phase, where you look around and you can't keep up with the changes we're seeing in the world. But it's really important to understand those changes. Think about the smartphone, for example. So smartphone 10 years ago was $800. There was one smartphone, which was the iPhone. And a smartphone is nothing else but a computer. You can actually calculate the moment in time or when you will have a $10 smartphone. You can have your $10 smartphone today, which is the crazy thing. If you go to a market in Nairobi, for example, you can literally buy an Android handheld phone, which is typically better than the first iPhone, for just $10. So I think exponentials feel surreal when they're really steep. When you look at the cost for DNA sequencing, so reading a DNA, that cost dropped from about $2.7 billion US in 1999 to about $100 today. That's in 16 years. You go from something nation states can do it and they do it exactly once because it's so expensive, to your doctor can start to prescribe it. And then when you look at the trends, you will see that in about 5 years, sequencing a genome will become very close to free. And imagine what crazy stuff you can do with that. So we spent a bunch of time talking about Moore's Law, and I briefly mentioned that we see similar trends in synthetic biology or digital biology. Let me pull out one more trend, which I'm sure you have heard of, but you've probably not fully understood that it's actually moving on an exponential curve, which is solar energy. So solar panels cost us about $80 a kilowatt hours in the late 70s. It dropped to about $10 a kilowatt hour in the late 80s. And since about 2 years here in California, in the USA, we produce solar energy at only 30 cents a kilowatt hour, which is the same price we're currently paying for coal-based power, which is the cheapest way of power we can produce. And it keeps moving on an exponential curve. So experts will tell you that solar energy will soon become very close to free.
Okay, so very close to free sounds ridiculous, like science fiction, right? Well, that's because exponentials are ridiculous. We actually filmed this with Pascal in 2017. And by the time we edited it in 2018, all of the numbers that we had done research on were wrong. By the time you watch this, all of the numbers will change yet again because exponentials are ridiculous. But the fun thing about this lesson is we're going to be projecting that ridiculousness 20 years into the future. Imagine going back in time 20 years and trying to convince people that they would have a supercomputer in their pocket. It's ridiculous.
All right, so let me let you into a dirty secret. So we're calling this thing Moore's Law, and it kind of sounds like a physical law, you know, like Newton's law, like gravity and that stuff. Well, it's not a law. It's actually an agreement we as humans who are working in this industry have made 50 years ago, where we said we challenge ourselves to build machines and chips which are twice as fast at the same price point. Interesting enough, we kept on it, and we've been doing this for the last 50 years, and there's no end in sight. So in a lot of ways, when you look at these exponential trends, they are not like, laws of nature. They're laws of people wanting to do the thing and pushing really hard, which, by the way, I'm hoping you're doing the same here. So get inspired by the people who made Moore's Law happen and make your own law happen.